Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
We tried to draft your ass last year, for God's sake. Did you hear that? Did you hear what Todd Monken said to Shedeur Sanders on day one? Before a single offensive rep was run, before a single depth chart was posted, before the narrative machine could even warm up its engines, the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns walked up to his second-year quarterback, gave him a hug, and told him he tried to take him in Baltimore. That's not the story of a quarterback who's a liability. That's not the story of a kid who's too much drama to touch. That's the story of a head coach who wanted this player, who tried to get this player, and who now has the chance to actually develop him properly. But sure, keep telling me Shedeur Sanders is the problem in Cleveland. I'm Dre Fiver. This is Dre Reports. No filter, no corporate overlords. Just the truth, all the way down. Because here we go again, y'all. The same media, the same narratives, the same recycled takes dressed up in new headlines. This week, Bleacher Report's Christopher Knox dropped a 2026 season prediction that had the Cleveland Browns going 5-12 again. 5-12. The same record as last year. The year where, and I need everybody to say this with me, Shedeur Sanders did not get a single first-team rep before being thrown into action mid-game. The year where the offensive line was historically bad. The year where the head coach had reportedly already lost the locker room before Thanksgiving. That's the baseline. 5-12. And the prediction is, same thing again. Why? Because according to the media, the quarterback situation is still a question mark. And the quarterback situation is still a question mark because Shedeur Sanders can't play. And Shedeur Sanders can't play because, well, they never actually finish that sentence with facts, do they? 5-12. Let that breathe for a second. The sportsbooks currently have the Cleveland Browns over-under at 6.5 wins, according to multiple reports. 6.5, and Christopher Knox at Bleacher Report is coming in below that. Below the Vegas line. For a team that has a completely new coaching staff, a significantly upgraded offensive line, two promising first-round picks from the 2026 draft in tackle Spencer Fano and receiver Casey Concepcion, and a second-year quarterback who, just in case y'all forgot, closed out last season by beating the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals in back-to-back weeks. But yeah, 5-12 again. Makes total sense. Here's what burns me about this prediction. It's not that it's bold. Bold is fine. Bold is interesting. What burns me is that it's lazy. It's a prediction built entirely on the assumption that Shedeur Sanders is going to fail. Not on the evidence of his play. Not on a detailed breakdown of the offensive scheme. Not on any serious analysis of what Todd Monken installed in Baltimore or what he is building in Cleveland. It's just Shedeur Sanders, 5 wins. Done. As the folks on 92.3 The Fan pointed out this week, the Browns went 5-12 in a season where literally everything that could go wrong went wrong. And you're projecting the same result with new coaching, upgraded weapons, a healthier offensive line, and a second-year quarterback who presumably won't be learning the playbook from the bench with 0 reps? That's not analysis. That's confirmation bias wearing a press credential. Let's put some actual numbers on the table, because I'm tired of this conversation being held without them. In his 7 starts as a rookie, 7 starts he was completely unprepared for because he didn't get first-team reps until he was literally thrown into a game mid-play. Shedeur Sanders threw for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was sacked 23 times in 8 appearances. 23 sacks. And yet people are evaluating his completion percentage and his interception total without mentioning that he was running for his life behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. According to ESPN's reporting on his rookie season, Shedeur's scramble yards ranked tied for 5th among qualifying passers during his 7-game stretch, tied with Justin Herbert. Not a bad guy to be mentioned alongside for mobility. He also went out and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Back-to-back, to close out a 5-1-2 season. A 5-1-2 season that, by the way, as ESPN's Myles Garrett told Micah Parsons' podcast, gave the entire locker room a clear picture of who the franchise was looking at as its guy going forward. Myles Garrett, the best defensive player in the NFL, said Sanders is the guy they're looking at. He said it publicly. He said it out loud. And Garrett isn't a man who says things he doesn't mean. So I want somebody to explain to me, slowly and clearly, how a player who beat 2 division opponents to end his rookie year with no reps and a terrible offensive line around him, who has the endorsement of his team's best player, and who is now working under a head coach who tried to draft him the year before, How that player deserves a 5-win prediction. I'm waiting. Now let me tell y'all what's actually happening in Berea, Ohio right now. Because when you get past the noise, the actual facts on the ground are encouraging. According to ESPN's coverage of the Browns' first voluntary veteran minicamp, Shedeur Sanders was first up in team drills on day one. Not second, not third, first. He was splitting first-team reps with Deshaun Watson. He wore his number 2 jersey again, the number he wore all through college, which he couldn't wear last year because of the roster situation. And after practice, he told the media there was a new vibe and new energy with Todd Monken and his staff. He said, and I'm paraphrasing from the ESPN report here, that the coaches speak life into you, that they embrace you as a person while pushing you daily in the meeting room and on the field. He talked about Monken telling him on day one that if he wanted to be the best quarterback he could be, he had to commit to a daily regimen of improvement. That's coaching. That's actual quarterback development. That is the thing that was completely absent last year. And let me give you one more detail that I think matters more than any prediction article. According to ESPN's reporting on Monken's arrival, when the new head coach walked into the building, he greeted Shedeur Sanders with a hug and joked about trying to draft him while he was the Ravens' offensive coordinator. Monken was part of the Baltimore staff that wanted Shedeur in the 2025 draft before Sanders told them he didn't want to back up Lamar Jackson. Read that again. One of the most respected offensive minds in the league, who had inside knowledge of Shedeur's potential from the scouting process, tried to get him. And now he's his head coach. The system is going to be built for Shedeur to succeed, not in spite of him. For him. Now let's address the elephant in the room, because I know somebody in the comments is about to bring up Deshaun Watson. So let me get ahead of it. Yes, Watson is technically in the quarterback competition. Yes, per FanDuel Sportsbook odds reported by Heavy.com. Watson was listed as the initial favorite at -174 to be the Week 1 starter. Yes, Todd Monken has said publicly that it is an open competition. All of that is true. But here's the context that matters. Deshaun Watson did not play a single snap in the 2025 season. He tore his Achilles in 2024, then underwent a second surgery in January 2025 after re-tearing it, and spent all of last year on the physically unable to perform list. According to ESPN's reporting on the quarterback situation in Cleveland, Watson is years removed from the dual threat ability that made him one of the league's top quarterbacks in Houston, and the Browns still owe him $46 million in guaranteed money. According to Sports Illustrated, owner Jimmy Haslam himself publicly admitted that trading for Watson was a miss for the franchise. His own owner called it a miss, and yet somehow people are still out here writing Watson as the frontrunner, picking him as the starter, and using his very existence on the roster as evidence that Shedeur Sanders shouldn't be trusted. Here's my honest take. Deshaun Watson is in that quarterback room because the Browns have no financial choice. They cannot release him without the cap hit destroying the franchise. So he's there, he's competing, and Todd Monken, who is a professional and is handling this the right way, is saying it's an open competition, because that is both true and fair. But the evidence, the minicamp reps, the coaching relationship, the Myles Garrett endorsement, the fact that Monken tried to draft Shedeur in Baltimore, all points in one direction, and it ain't pointing at Deshaun Watson. Let me talk about what this Cleveland Browns team actually looks like going into 2026, because the narrative that this is the same 5-win roster is factually wrong. According to ESPN's draft analysis coverage, the Browns spent the first wave of free agency specifically addressing the offensive line, one of the most catastrophic problem areas from last season. They then went out in the 2026 draft and used the 9th overall pick on Utah tackle Spencer Fano and the 24th pick on Texas A&M receiver Casey Concepcion. 2 first-round picks, both directly addressing the weapons and protection that Shedeur desperately needed last year. They also added receiver Denzel Boston and other pieces to what was, according to ESPN, the league's least productive receiver room in 2025. Think about that for a second. Shedeur Sanders threw for 1,400 yards behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league to the least productive group of wide receivers in professional football. And he went 3-4 as a starter, and he beat 2 division opponents to close the year. And people are out here with 5-win predictions. Not 8, not 7, 5, with a new coach who is building the offense around him, with an upgraded line, with legitimate receiving targets for the first time, with a defensive coordinator who actually brings fresh ideas to go alongside what is still, when healthy, one of the most talented defensive units in the AFC built around Myles Garrett. Now look, I am not promising the Browns are going to the Super Bowl. I am not here to be a cheerleader. What I am here to do is hold people accountable for lazy analysis. The radio segment from 92.3 The Fan that's been circulating this week made a point that I completely agree with. This Browns roster, even last year's version, was not as bad as people were treating it. Earl from that segment laid it out perfectly. The 2024 roster was ranked inside the top 15 heading into that season. Same core players. Then they have one bad year, and suddenly those same players are at the bottom of every power ranking. The roster didn't become trash overnight. The coaching situation was broken. That's a different problem, and that problem has been addressed. I want to address something that I think exposes the media game more clearly than anything else in this whole conversation. When writers and analysts say the Browns have all kinds of question marks at quarterback, they are technically correct. There is a competition. It is unresolved. Watson could, theoretically, win the job. All of that is true. But here's what those same writers never do. They never apply the same skepticism to the team's past. The same people who are predicting 5 wins because of quarterback uncertainty had the Cleveland Browns in their top 15 heading into the 2024 season, with the same Deshaun Watson who just spent all of 2025 on injured reserve. So Watson was not a question mark then. A guy with 2 Achilles surgeries, years removed from his best football, under multiple seasons of misconduct allegations and public controversy, that was not a question mark when you were ranking Cleveland as a top 15 roster? But Shedeur Sanders, a 23-year-old second-year quarterback who went 3-4 in his first starts, with no preparation backed by a Defensive Player of the Year who publicly endorses him. That is a question mark? The inconsistency is the tell. The inconsistency shows you that the analysis isn't about the football. The analysis is about the narrative. It has always been about the narrative, and the narrative has been decided since before Shedeur took his first NFL snap. This kid is going to fail. And when his first year was complicated by circumstances entirely outside his control, the media treated those circumstances not as context but as confirmation of what they had already decided. According to Todd Monken himself, as reported by Heavy.com from his appearance on 92.3 The Fan, when asked about the narrative, he said, "You want to stop the narrative? Play well. Want to stop the narrative? Win." I love that. That's a coach who understands the game being played and is telling his quarterback to answer it the only way it can be answered, on the field, with results. And everything I've seen coming out of that minicamp building in Berea suggests that Shedeur Sanders heard that message and is ready to deliver. Here is the thing about the anybody but Shedeur crowd that nobody wants to say out loud. At some point, you have to look at the pattern and ask the honest question, what would Shedeur Sanders have to do to receive the benefit of the doubt? Not the benefit of a doubt he didn't earn. Genuine benefit of the doubt. The kind every first-round quarterback in the league automatically gets. The kind that has teams picking up fifth-year options on guys with lower completion percentages and fewer division wins in their rookie seasons. The kind that says, okay, this kid has a lot of circumstances working against him. Let's see what year 2 looks like with more support. Because as it currently stands, Shedeur fell to the 5th round, and that was his fault for having a famous dad. He didn't get first-team reps, and that was his fault for being a distraction. He threw 10 interceptions behind one of the worst offensive lines in football, and that was proof he couldn't handle NFL pressure. He went 3-4 as a starter in the last 7 games and finished by beating 2 division opponents, and that was written off as garbage time on a bad team. Everything is his fault. Every negative is a character flaw. Every positive is an asterisk. That's not evaluation. That's a predetermined conclusion in search of evidence. Todd Monken is not playing that game, and that is precisely why he is getting heat. Because when a credible, respected NFL head coach treats Shedeur Sanders as a legitimate starting quarterback, splits first-team reps with him on day 1, greets him with a hug, says publicly that he would have drafted him in Baltimore, it threatens the narrative. It means the story might have to change, and a significant portion of the sports media ecosystem has too much identity invested in the story they already wrote. So they predict 5 wins. They write Watson as the frontrunner. They ask if Dion is going to be a distraction, anything to keep the predetermined conclusion alive. Well, I got news for you. The grass tells the truth. And when Shedeur Sanders gets on that field this training camp, with real reps, with real weapons, under a real offensive mind who built his system around quarterbacks, we're going to find out real quick what the truth is. And I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be very uncomfortable with the answer. Let me close the loop on the win total argument because I think it matters. And I think the national media is embarrassing themselves by anchoring at 5. The case for the Cleveland Browns being a legitimate 8, 9, maybe 10-win team in 2026 is not crazy. It is not homer logic. It is based on real football analysis. Here's the foundation. According to the conversation making rounds on Cleveland radio this week, in the 2025 season, the Browns went 5-12 despite a head coach who by most accounts had lost the locker room by midseason. A stagnant, predictable offensive philosophy that coordinators around the league could game plan against before the snap. A historically bad offensive line, and a quarterback situation that saw their highest-profile young player not take a single first-team rep in training camp. Those aren't excuses. Those are documented, observable facts. Now remove those factors. Bring in Todd Monken, who was the offensive coordinator for a Ravens offense that was one of the most creative in the league. Bring in an offensive line that was specifically upgraded in free agency. Draft 2 first-round weapons. Give the second-year quarterback actual reps and an actual relationship with his coaching staff. Keep the defensive core intact around Myles Garrett. Tell me, specifically, which of those changes does not improve the team from 5 wins? Tell me the thing that gets worse. The only honest answer is nothing gets worse. The floor goes up. Whether the ceiling is 8 wins or 10 wins is debatable, and the quarterback situation is genuinely the variable that determines that ceiling. But 5 wins is not a prediction. 5 wins is a wish. It's the prediction you make when you've decided you don't want to be wrong about Shedeur Sanders, and you're setting your bar at the floor to protect your narrative. And I'm done pretending it's analysis. I'll make it simple. Todd Monken is getting criticism right now for doing the obvious thing, coaching his second-year quarterback, like he's the future of the franchise, for treating Shedeur Sanders like a professional, for being excited about developing a player he tried to draft the year before, for building an offense that could actually succeed around his personnel, rather than despite them. And the people criticizing him for that are the same people who predicted 5 wins, who wrote Watson as the frontrunner based on Vegas lines rather than on field evidence, and who have been wrong about this kid at every stage of his career. The Browns might not win a championship in 2026, but they are not going 5-12 again. They are not the same broken franchise they were under the previous regime, and Shedeur Sanders is not the liability he has been painted as. He is a second-year quarterback with elite mobility, improved weapons, a new offensive mastermind who believes in him, and a chip on his shoulder the size of Lake Erie. That combination is either going to produce something remarkable, or it's going to produce ammunition for every hot take artist from here to ESPN First Take. But I know which way I'm betting, and I'll see y'all at the end of the season when the receipts come due. That's your Dre Reports wrap-up. If this episode opened your eyes to what's really going on in Cleveland, smash that like button right now. Not later. Right now. And drop a comment. Tell me, do you think Shedeur Sanders starts Week 1 for the Cleveland Browns? Do you think the national media has been fair to this kid? Let me know where you stand, because the comments section is the only place where we actually get to have this conversation without an agenda. And if you haven't subscribed to Dre Reports yet, you are literally choosing to be uninformed. Hit that button, turn on the bell. We are here every week. No filters, no favors, just the truth. I'm Dre Fiver. Peace. Count 350.